Hi, Morgan.
I'm here now too.
Oh,
Hi,
great.
Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Okay, well, it's 5:34, and welcome to the April meeting, the Food Council meeting. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that we are still meeting on unceded Mi'kmaq territory, even though we're meeting on Zoom WebEx. And I think we do have quorum, so we will start the meeting. I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll need to appoint a meeting secretary for this evening's council meeting. Any takers? Thank you for a great job, Morgan, last time. So you get a rest this evening.
You're paroled.
I think I said I was going to do it.
Great.
Is that Karen?
Oh, that's Colleen.
Colleen? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colleen.
Just give me
That's
2
still a go?
seconds.
Sure.
Yeah. Just my computer decided to update itself just as I was joining this, so I'm just kind of getting a few things sorted out.
Just while you're doing that, I just got a text from Megan saying she's having a bit of trouble connecting. So hopefully she'll be in soon.
Yeah, okay. Just go ahead, Bernie. I'll just take notes and type it up after.
And
If
if we go too fast, just let us know.
Okay.
We can keep track of everything. Okay, so Colleen's going to be the meeting note taker. Declaration of conflict of interest. Based on what we have here on the agenda, is there anything to declare for a conflict of interest? Anything to declare for a conflict of interest?
Nope.
There doesn't seem to be. So moving forward, review and approval of the agenda. We've had a chance to look at the agenda. Anything we would like to add?
I can bring it up too if you want.
Does everyone have the agenda?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great.
Had a chance to look at it. I'll ask a second time. Any review of agenda items? If not, we'll proceed with what we have on this nice, beautiful piece of paper that Katrina sent out.
And can I just confirm, Bernie, who all's there? I'm just so I've got Bernie, Brad, Phil, Morgan, and Katrina.
Yeah, Reza Gacero is there as well.
Okay.
And it looks like Megan is just coming in.
Okay.
Megan Adams.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
I'm
So
here.
if we can have a motion.
Oh, I think Karen's
Sorry.
saying she's here too.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think she mentioned.
thanks.
Yeah. Can we have a motion to accept the minutes as proposed? Phil, a seconder? Brad,
Freezing. Okay.
seconded by Brad.
Yeah.
All in favor, just show of hands. Okay, motion carried. I think Karen, I'm not seeing you on video, but you're okay with the agenda? Are you still there, Karen? I think we've lost Karen.
Yeah.
Megan, are you there? Well, according to our bylaws, if we start with quorum and people leave, we still have quorum. So we'll continue.
I'm still here.
Okay, thank you. Adoption of March 16th minutes, if we've had a chance to review those. And if so, if we could have a motion to accept March 16th minutes. Hello, Megan.
Hi, sorry, it's being painful connecting tonight. Sorry.
I'm going
Sorry,
to turn
go
off my
ahead.
video because mine is going in and out. I'm still here, but I won't
I'll
be
do
very
the
visual.
same.
Just, it's really bad. Okay.
We are on the folks who are just joining us. We're on number 5, adoption of March 15th minutes. Megan March 16 minutes. Unless was there something that Megan, you weren't here when we were looking over the agenda? Was there anything you'd want to see on the agenda?
No, I don't have anything else to add for this evening. Thanks, though.
Okay. So adoption of the March 16 minutes. If I can have a motion to adopt those.
In favor.
Seconder.
I can second. Oh, Phil and I said.
Megan seconds it. We're all in favor. Show of hands or say yes if we don't see you, I guess.
Yes.
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 Okay. Motion carried. Items for discussion. So we have policy review updates. That's pretty much what we have on today's agenda, plus the asset map. First up would be the food waste with Colleen, Brad, and Megan. Are there any updates in regards to that policy?
Okay. Really quickly, I looked at 6 or 7 different cities and found 2 to 3 were using an app. And then about 3 or 4 of them actually had quite active presences on the city website regarding the recovery of food, like sort of dealing with food waste, putting it into a food system. The thing that was interesting to me was that the app itself is only one piece of it, and that there would need to be a personnel support behind that in terms of actually launching it to get, say, retailers and distributors on side. So that's kind of what I found out about that. I did talk to the food bank here, and they have a pretty good informal arrangement with distributors and retailers. When they have excess of something, they just get called. But I think it would be worthy to look at some of the other sort of food charity assets and see what they have in place in terms of those kind of connections. And then to kind of, if we feel we want to, ask if there's something that could be done to, help them link up, i.e. like the app question, if that's a question that we want to open the door to, because we'd have to have a sense if there's kind of any resources or something behind something like that for the implementation, maybe in the maintenance. And the other, it was St. John, New Brunswick, or St. John's, Newfoundland, and Richmond, BC, and also Toronto use of an app, but they also had like person or people dedicated to developing the connections in the beginning and getting people signed up and that sort of thing. The food bank here did make a suggestion that it would be helpful if the Charlottetown City website or someone did some promotion on best before dates and what they really mean, because they sometimes get criticized of handing out substandard food, and that's a problem for them in terms of image. But there's a guideline from Food Banks Canada that clearly outlines sort of a food safety approach to recovering food, and they're following that. So I think I'll just, if it's something worth pursuing, I can continue to try and follow up with some of the other charity groups and just see what their situations are and what their barriers are to something like that.
That is interesting, because some people may be throwing out food or not thinking they can donate because of those expiry dates.
Yeah, and even bigger, like with the retailers and stuff, they may not be aware also. So I think it's a worthy awareness campaign. I just don't know if it fits under what we're aiming to do with this kind of policy, like kind of looking at there's no real bylaw piece to it. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's okay, actually, I was going to sort of bring this up at the end, but I think it fits in well here. It's something that's been developing at the city just in the last couple of days. So I think I mentioned last time that we were sort of looking at a few things around this within the city, that the study that came out of Richmond, we had sort of caught wind of and thought it sounded really impressive. So something that's come up is the province has launched the second round of their Climate Challenge Fund, and applications are due at the end of this month. And so the project that was done in Richmond was done with a company called Food Mesh, and essentially they have developed this app. And what Richmond did was they paid them a flat fee up front to do basically what you're saying, Colleen, in terms of like the marketing and the outreach and the working one-on-one with the distributors and say charities or other businesses to bring them on to the app interface and get them using it. So what we're looking at is putting in an application to the Climate Challenge Fund to fund that. And we would be intending to work with Food Mesh. We'd probably have to go through some sort of procurement process behind that, but I don't think there'd be anybody else really that would be able to provide us with the exact same service. But we would have to see.
Yep.
But
Okay.
yeah, we are looking at that and hoping to put in an application with a few other partners.
Would it be reasonable to include with that application some updates to the city's website?
Well, we wouldn't really need to budget for that. I mean, that's certainly something that we could look at doing. I really do sort of see that, not that we can't advocate for that, of course we can, but also like IWMC would be, I feel kind of also fit within that. So maybe that's a conversation I can have with them, or one of us can have with them. But yeah, certainly we can looking at doing some outreach on the city side of things as well.
Because I think that, like, when a charity is being criticized for giving away perfectly good food because the best before date is a messed up system, then that suggests that we have a consumer awareness concern as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm not sure too if that's something that could fit within, like, the nice thing about this project that we're looking at is essentially we would just be looking for funds, and then it would get passed off to this outsourced company that's seen a lot of success, because capacity of human resources within the city is currently definitely a limiting factor. So maybe it's something we could build into that as well, for them to do a bit of consumer outreach on something like this.
And you would imagine hiring a local person, I assume.
Yeah, that's what they've talked about doing.
Yeah, because that's what I think it was St. John's. I can't remember if they're using that app or the other one, but that's what they did. They're using the Toronto one. They hired an outreach coordinator basically to get it online on stream.
Yeah, and so they were talking like there would be an option to keep the cost down and to have it be more virtual and based out of the group that's in BC. But I think with the conversations we've been, obviously that's not ideal, and the conversations that we've been having the last couple of days, I'm hoping that the way the application will go in, it would be to hire someone within PEI.
Yeah, and they use their IT platform, which sounds like a really good platform that can generate a lot of data.
Yeah.
So I will, I guess, cease and desist on that one for a while. Do you see there's any value in contacting some of the other charities and raising some awareness there, or just leave it go for a while?
I'd love other people's opinions on it as well, but I do think I'm interested to know what the sort of state of things are. I don't feel like that's something we have a good sense of. So personally, I would be interested to know what other situations are, but certainly other people weigh in.
Anyone else? An opinion on this?
I think it's an important piece of work and it's exciting. I think if we could access that climate change pot of funds, but the work that you're doing, Colleen, I think is great too.
Okay, so I'll see if I can get hold of a few of the other charities and just get a sense of their state of affairs. And I think it can add value conceivably to the application, although I suppose that's probably going in before too long, right?
It's due April 30th. So if you happen to hear anything before then, it would definitely be great to include, but if not, that's okay too. And I think it would still be valuable information.
Yeah, okay. That's great, thanks.
I wonder, Colleen, has anybody ever come up with two different? One is last date to sell, and another being a last date to use.
Sorry, you're garbling up it for me, Phil.
Sorry, I don't have a very good microphone. Has anyone ever come up with, say, two different dates for products? One being a date for the last day that you could sell it, and another date for the last day that it could be consumed.
Not in Canada, to my knowledge. I think in the UK, I think they've got something like that, but we just have what we have right now.
Yeah, it's pretty much just all like industry standards. It's like the best before date is related to quality, and then there's actual expiry, like expiry dates. But those, like, you don't really see those a lot with fresh products.
Yeah,
So
because the expiry dates
yeah.
are specific for things that are like for infant formula and stuff like that.
Exactly. Medication and that stuff. Whereas like it's mostly like there'll be packed on dates and open buy dates, but none of them are regulated. There's no one overseeing any of these labeling. And it's like industry doing it, for their own purposes. There's no one really, like, CFIA doesn't oversee that or anything like that. So yeah.
I think the protocol that Food Banks Canada has developed is very sort of science-based in terms of food spoilage and food safety. So it's a way of kind of working with the existing system to make sure that less food ends up in the waste stream.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're going to change the industry right now, but I think we can educate people as to what those dates really mean by way of kind of the website, but then also that facilitates the rescue for the charity type organizations.
Yeah. Were you looking at the Love Food, Hate Waste?
Looked a little bit at that, yeah.
Yeah, and they have a really good explanation of all the different labels and dates.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they've done some interesting programs in PEI and also Nova Scotia.
Oh, really?
So I did send that. I can share that. It was Prince Street School with the Little Sobeys on Allen Street, and then Feed Nova Scotia, working with Sobeys in Nova Scotia, has, like, I think their data says 200,000 meals or something like that. So there's lots of mechanisms for it, and they don't use an electronic app, I don't think. Anyway, I don't want to tie up that conversation too far. And pass it over to Brad and the compost.
Yeah. Like I've drafted up a change to the nuisance bylaw, which was like, section 3.2B, or sorry, 3.12B, where it identifies that Island Waste Management Company, all waste, including compost and recyclable materials, need to be in an IWMC approved, container or receptacle. If we were to change that, I've kind of just written up something. I haven't shared it with anyone yet, but I can share it if people want after this meeting. Just essentially just adding a little paragraph saying if you're composting on your premises for personal use, it doesn't necessarily need to be in an IWMC approved container. It can just be just like a compost container or whatever that you get at Home Depot or wherever. I don't know when they are planning on revising the nuisance bylaw. It was revised 4 years ago. So I don't know if I didn't look to see when the next revision is, but I think that should be changed. That's really the only thing identifying, like, it's a small issue. I don't think anyone's gonna, have a problem with somebody composting in their backyard, but just, that one bylaw does indicate that you're essentially not allowed to. So it may have just been oversight or whatever, but I can share that if we want to move forward with that. In terms of trying to deal with restaurant plant-based waste for composting, whether or for animal feed. There's like, I've talked to a few different restaurants, and there seems to be like a little piecemeal. People are kind of doing it. They're saving up their plant waste and then giving it to homesteaders and stuff like that. But if the city wanted to take like a more controlled approach on it, and I just don't know where it's going to go. Like if for example the Legacy Garden maybe wanted to have some composting, but it's just a coordination. It's going to involve people, because we can't have because I doubt restaurants are going to be doing the delivery on themselves. So it just depends if we want to kind of coordinate some sort of a citywide effort where this could happen or not. But
I wonder if the city is looking at an app and the app is moving food from place A to place B, if that same app couldn't be adapted to say, this one's going to animal feed or compost or food charity.
Yeah.
Because then it would be a single site of coordination, but different outputs.
Yeah, because the farmers could, larger operations aren't going to want this product. They have controlled feed, but the people that have a half a dozen hogs or something like that would probably want some free food for their animals. So it would be worthwhile for them to maybe go pick it up. So if there was just some sort of a centralized location, but it's just finding that place essentially.
Yeah.
And then just hope. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Brad. I think there'd probably be value even in kind of providing a bit of a matchmaking service, like to match homesteaders, as an example, with certain restaurants or restaurant chains, because as you say, like it's pretty piecemeal, and I'm sure that a lot of restaurants would be interested, but they don't necessarily have those connections. So that would be I think that would be worthwhile too. And then potentially cut down on the coordination kind of challenges.
Yeah,
yeah,
sure. Yeah, because like the Murphy Group, they have 6 restaurants. Could easily coordinate with them. And then, I know the table out in New London, Chef Hunter Gideon there, he sends all of his plant-based compost to Hope River Farms, and so she gets all of his potato peelings and everything like that to feed their pigs, and then they end up buying pigs from them. So there's a lot of connections, and just connecting restaurants with local producers, especially for meat, would be, I think, beneficial in many ways, but including waste. But I just don't really know what next steps would be. I guess it would just be talking to some sort of restaurant association, I guess, or something, or going to the restaurants directly.
Brad, a couple of comments. One, I would prefer that you do not suggest that homeowners would have to get some kind of other type of container from Canadian Tire or something. I think a suggestion that it's just commonly accepted standards for compost. I, for one, don't want to compost in a plastic bin. have my own system that I've been using for years, and it works just fine. I think Megan had a good, or Morgan had a good idea about possibly some sort of networking. The problem I think is that the volume really, even from a big restaurant, isn't really enough to make it worthwhile to go pick it up all the time. You know, I've made connections with various coffee shops to get coffee grounds. And although I could pick up, you know, a bin of coffee grounds, it's still just, it's more of a hassle than it's worth. And some of it's happening organically already. Like I know hog farmers are picking up the brewery waste at Upstreet. I imagine they're getting it from other places as well. You know, we've been trying to get the brewery waste at Upstreet because it's right next door to us. And it's tough because the hog farmers are grabbing it.
Yeah,
So
that's
I'm
a good
thinking-
point about
I'm thinking
the containers.
I'm thinking it might make sense to maybe apply some pressure or recommendations to Island Waste Management to have a better quality product that they're composting, that they're, you know, do more source separation. They're already in the business and they're getting paid to make compost. Maybe they should be pressured to make good compost.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing actually, Phil. I also think it's interesting, and I just wrote down on my list of things to do to check in with the company I've been talking to about the kind of like matchmaking service, if you will, for, you know, edible food to consumers, but whether that could be incorporated in some way, which would be cool. But rather than taking on some huge new project where we're engaging all these restaurants and, you know, everything like that, which would be great, but I am intrigued by what Phil suggested of maybe we can, you know.
Yeah, and Karen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for the most part, it's the organic people that are interested in compost, but I don't think a certified organic farmer would be allowed to pick up household waste, household compost, because you never know what's really in it.
That's correct, Phil. Although you know what, conventional farmers are very interested as well in compost product, but they're not permitted, and they won't. Most of them will not use that product because of the foreign material. It's excessive. That's in that material that comes from Island Waste Management. It's not an acceptable product to be using on farm. And you're absolutely right, though. The Canadian Organic standard will not permit the use of municipal waste on farm. I mean, there would be potential if there was a high quality, consistent product coming out of that facility, there might be an argument to be made given the lack of carbon-based inputs that we have available to us here in this province on those farms. You know, there might be, you know, there could be potentially an argument taken to the Standards Interpretation Committee to sort of allow that in this particular instance, in this particular place. But I do appreciate your point, and I think it's something that we really should, as perhaps a city and a municipality, move forward on, is working towards ensuring a much better quality product comes out of that facility in Brookfield. It's really rather disappointing that, you know, there's all kinds of money and all kinds of effort goes into that, and you know, it's a really low quality, sort of unusable product. And it's a shame because everybody's looking for that kind of carbon-based input.
I wonder if we want to form a committee to talk to the opposition party. I think the opposition party might be interested in putting forth a motion to develop a better quality product.
Is that, I mean, I'd be down with that, but I don't know if is that the role of the council?
Yeah, I was just going to weigh in on that too. I think certainly as citizens, I mean, obviously you can advocate for whatever you like, and that sounds great. I think you can also what I think you can do, what this committee is meant to do, is advocate to the city what they would like to see done. So if you can see a role, you know, that the city councilors or mayor would have in terms of, say, like writing a letter and sending it to a specific person to advocate for an issue, that's where I think this committee can come in that way. But in terms of individual actions as residents or as citizens,
Well,
then I
yeah,
can't.
well, I would certainly argue, though, that as a municipality, we produce probably the largest amount of municipal compostable waste in the province, and that's being delivered to that facility in Brookfield. And I mean, no one has ever been able to give me a concrete answer in terms of where is that product going once it's processed and removed from that facility. Certainly not going on farm. I don't know. I don't know many community gardens, for instance, or individual gardeners. I don't see it at garden centers. So I'd be very curious to know where it's going, because if it's not a high quality product, I can't imagine who's buying it and who's using it. So, and I think as a municipality, it's a valuable product that could be coming back here as a municipality, back here to the citizens. And yeah, so I mean, I definitely see a role for advocacy there, but does anybody know?
Has anyone ever been there?
Yeah, I
Is
have.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's god awful. I mean, it's really bad. You can hardly breathe inside the building. And it's like just a mixture of all kinds of paper and junk and needles and nails and glass, and that hopefully they cleaned that up since I was there several years ago, but that's a problem that I've heard consistently.
Would it be as a suggestion if a committee of members of the council went to visit to see where it's at before we start asking for the city to do something? As Karen mentioned, we're one of the ones that the city that uses it the most. Is it worth going out there to have a look at it and getting our information correct or updated, I guess, from previous years? What do people think about that?
Well, there's still sufficient foreign material in the product that's leaving that facility that is unable to be used in the agricultural industry in this province.
And you're hearing that from the farmers, Karen, right?
No, I'm not hearing that from the farmer. That's a known fact. The processors, the Canadian Hort Council, no one will allow that stuff to be used on farm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of pulling together. Sorry, Karen. I was just going to say, I think it's a matter of pulling together facts like that to sort of form your case, and then making a recommendation to the committee as to what you'd like to see done about it.
So for the sake of the minutes, would we say that people are interested in forming a subcommittee to put together an evidence-based letter regarding the quality and unacceptability of the compost, with the purpose of having the city, the mayor, write a letter to, and I didn't catch to who? Is that where we're going with that?
Is a subcommittee necessary for that type of work? I almost see it as like a natural continuation of the people in the food waste policy.
Yeah, I think that
I
makes
would
sense.
agree with that, Morgan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
that all sounds fine to me, by the way.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Really good advice. Yeah.
So I would just mention as well, I think there's a couple ways you could approach it. So the way that it will have to come to the city will be through in the form of a committee report to the Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee. That's where it would start. So there will need to be a report kind of like outlining what we talked about. You could either request that they write a letter, or you could also draft a letter to include that you would be looking for them to send, but you can sort of choose the approach you want to take.
I'll jump in and say that that also might be a really good like easy poll too, like to get the citizens involved to say like who's bought it, what did you think about it? Something really easy. It might be, can you get them to throw in the Facebook poll? Like, especially at this time of year, people are thinking about sourcing compost and I think that would be important to include, seeing as like kind of the purpose of our council.
There is a weekend in the spring in which Island Waste Management has compost available at the waste site there, just off the Mount Edward Road, and people can come and pick it up. You know, it's just a pound of compost. I'm always surprised that people pick it up.
I like that idea a lot, Morgan. My one sort of cautionary note on that though is I just want to make sure that as we approach this, it's not kind of like we're just throwing IWMC under, or like, you know, the process under the bus. So I would want to have that conversation with them first and all that fun stuff. But I do like the idea. I think it's some interesting information.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, like, you don't have to word it. You can word it in a way that's not, you know, like not making assumptions. Like to the point, a lot of people do seem to use it. So I wonder how many repeat customers they have, or if they have business dealing with it to make it more appropriate on an individual scale and gather the agricultural as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if we can frame it in a bit of a way of, you know, like, you know, where are people getting their compost, like a bit more general, and then kind of try and have a few more pointed questions.
So how does stuff get onto the Facebook site for that kind of feedback?
So you can go through me for that. It would be a matter of developing something, like we can, you know, you can draft something, we can work together on that, and then it would go officially for communications approval, and then they would get it on there.
Okay, thanks.
You can start with me.
Thank you, Colleen, Brad, and Megan. Was there anything else that we wanted to add to this before we move on to healthy food? We seem to have a plan of action for next meeting. Okay. So next up is healthy food.
Yeah.
Sheena's not here, so Megan.
Yeah. Sounds like she's doing okay. So but I have connected with my colleagues in the Chief Public Health Office, and actually, Morgan, you'll find this funny. I'm actually now involved in the health eating role. Aaron has moved on, so I thought you'd find that funny tonight. So we have a better connect now. So basically, I'm gonna work to make the connections with the right folks. There is a provincial children nutrition standards group that sort of partnered with Heart and Stroke Foundation, it sounds like, to do the work on the audit of the rec facilities. And news to me since the last meeting, the government has actually provided seed grants to some of the rec facilities. Like they've been able to apply for seed grants to support recipes and sort of booklets and just support in moving forward on some of this work, recognizing that policies in this context aren't effective if the on the ground folks don't have the buy-in and the skills or the infrastructure to do so. So that's really exciting that there's some grants there. I would say at this point though, like we're not in a place to start going ahead with the policy. I just want to see where that group is at. And given that this is a new role for me as of 3 business days ago, still trying to navigate those waters. But I think it's work that's gonna keep getting pushed ahead in this province. And I think work that will be able to help. And then once we have a better sense of where we're at with those grants and with the rec facilities, I think then we can look to the draft policy that I mentioned last time, and moving that ahead for the city. And then, you know, as later phases, maybe other type institutions or other settings and environments. Yeah, I don't really have any updates, but yeah. And at the national level too, it sounds like there's some more guiding work happening for like school policies and childcare policies. So, you know, there may be some areas in terms of the supportive food environment that we could sort of latch on to, advocate for, and build on more policies for.
Okay. Thank you, Megan. Anybody have questions or comments? Congratulations, Megan, on your new post. Any questions or comments?
Thanks. Adding to the huge volume of things to do, but that's okay. It's good stuff.
Okay, I think we'll move on then to backyard food production.
Let you start, Morgan.
Sure. So Karen and I didn't get the chance to meet in person, but we did take kind of work with some of the things that we identified as next steps. So I put together a bit of a summary of the practices that we talked about last time, and I'm happy to do those now. I also found a poll from Senate BC. I thought would be a 2-question poll for their presentation. So I kind of did it to just one question. I thought it might be good for Facebook polling. That kind of so where I didn't hear back from them because I noticed that in particular, I think in Halifax or other municipalities in Nova Scotia, that they the Humane Society equivalent kind of it plays a pretty low role, and certainly wants to be in know about like the conditions in which the birds are kind of like the recommendations and the rules around that kind of stuff. So that's it for me. And I think Karen had the chance to talk to Sally.
I did, yes.
Right, Karen?
So yeah, so there's just a couple of things I'd wanted to mention. I did have a chance to I had a quick look. I forgot to before through the jurisdictional scan that we conducted of existing bylaws across the country. One of the places that I sort of neglected to look into and more closely examine was Summerside. They do permit backyard chickens in Summerside under their animal control bylaw, whereby individuals that wish to maintain backyard livestock of any description or a particular description must make an application directly to council to do so. And then council will review the application, and what they have done in the past is they do provide approvals, or they have provided approvals with very clear and well-defined requirements in order for that application to be approved. So again, we do have sort of local examples, and those, I don't have a clear idea of what those requirements are as part of that application process, an approval process, but I do know that that there are clear and defined requirements. I would suspect they are related to rodent control, livestock, and animal welfare, and unsightly premises types of requirements. As Morgan mentioned, I've also talked to Sally Bernard, who actually moves backyard chickens, to individuals all across the province. Some of them into sort of backyards that are, fairly spacious. Some of them, certainly not as spacious as a farmyard, but typically fairly spacious. She used to have the chickens returned to her at the end of the growing season, and now that has changed. Once they are delivered, they remain with the person who's taken ownership of the chickens for the entire duration of their earthly existence. So with that has come a lot of education, and sort of in terms of how feed is handled, how the birds are managed. She has indicated that by and large, people that are have a desire to maintain backyard chickens or backyard livestock are really, really careful and really, really interested in doing so. She said some of the cages and structures used to keep the animals are very, very intricate. Lots of investment made in them, and there's a lot of attention given to the birds. She's also indicated that she prefers to send 2 birds to each household because a single bird is, it's a lonely existence for a social animal like a chicken. So, but there are no more than 2 birds that go to any one location. And as I said, she has clear and distinct requirements for sort of how the animals are handled and managed, well in line with the Animal Welfare Act that is managed and overseen by the province of Prince Edward Island. And as well, she provides clear instructions on how to store and handle the feed that has the potential to attract rodents. So she does provide lots of advice and input with respect to how to manage and reduce the risk of rodents around the livestock area. So, having said that, what it sounds like to me, given, sort of the jurisdictional scan that we've undertaken, is that, this is certainly a possibility, but there have to be a lot of boxes that need to be checked in advance of there being an ability to have chickens in anyone's backyard.
Yeah, that's great, Karen. I don't know, are people through a snapshot of the best practices that we found? I know Phil raised concerns last time. Yeah, okay.
I would think
I can just do a really brief summary. Karen, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead. I think you should do that. Yes, please.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So as an example, as Karen mentioned, I guess I thought it was interesting to hear about Sally because typically the municipalities also provide that kind of like supporting evidence as well in terms of best practices in addition to the regulations that they set out. So it's important to do that as well. So what I found was that there's usually bylaws that exist to kind of ensure the hens are treated humanely, but also to protect the health of people living in the area. So around, poultry registration and applications for permits are usually part of it. There's requirements on the size and the location of coops. As an example, hens are to be kept in a building and enclosure in the property's rear yard, at least 3 meters from the rear property line and 3 meters from any door or window. So there's, it's typical for that. There's stipulations around how much indoor space each chicken has, and stuff about how to handle manure properly and the chicken feed as well. I thought it was interesting to note that only certain residential areas are allowed. It's not just kind of a blanket statement for all residential zones, and they typically have to do with the size of the residential lot. Typically, this is really common that roosters are not allowed just because they're usually the noisy ones. Owners must live on the property where they keep the hens. Hens cannot run at large. Thought that was kind of funny, but they typically, you see a lot of the wire kind of hoops laid out for them so that they can run around, but it's still in an enclosed area, so I guess they're not on the road and stuff like that. And as Karen mentioned, there are recommendations around the minimums amount of hens, but around the maximums as well is usually, they usually recommend at least 2 birds, but for kind of social for animal welfare reasons, but they also have strict maximums. And so I found that a lot of municipalities have a maximum of 5 birds. But depending on the municipality, like I found some that like included fairly rural areas, in Nova Scotia in particular. So they were I think at the time they allowed up to 10, but that was for a parcel of a residential lot greater than around 4,000 meters square. I'm not sure what that translates into acres, but additional resources are often provided for more information on hen care and health, food and water, how to prevent, detect disease, that kind of stuff. And then there's also best practices around public health, in particular around like the infectious disease transmission that could happen from birds to humans. And what they found in this little review that was done, I think Ontario Public Health completed it. And it was really around just kind of making sure that owners are aware that that can happen, and really basic intervention, including washing hands after handling the birds, proper disposal of dead birds, refraining from kissing and snuggling live poultry, and appropriate cleaning. So like pretty standard guidelines that could be easily laid out and it's great that we have a local example with Sally, because we could probably work with her to kind of develop some localized versions of that, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions?
Who would be the people that would oversee, like, to ensure that people are, following the regulations?
It would be the bylaw officer, as Katrina has mentioned. So they would be like really important to kind of contact. I don't know in terms of the next steps, but I think that would certainly be among the top. And I think that Karen mentioned as well that it might be worth, or maybe Katrina did, at our last meeting, that it would probably be worth kind of attempting to organize a like a chat with the bylaw officers in other municipalities that have recently done this, and just to see like what the extra workload looks like and things like that, yeah. And as I said, it would be really interesting to talk to the PEI Humane Society, I think, because often the equivalents are involved in some way in terms of some, I don't know about the monitoring, but they seem to be involved in some way to ensure that the birds are kind of kept humanely. So it's something to look into.
Good.
Thank you, Morgan. That's an exhaustive list of criterias and restrictions, and Karen, you were saying Summerside is doing it, so it's on the island. So if one small community is doing it, there's potential. I'm no expert. I guess we're just trying to gather all the information. Any comments on? I know Phil, you had mentioned maybe some reticence about doing this based on some examples you had given. What's your sense right now?
Well, now it's true and popular. I think Megan and Karen did a good job of outlining the amount of regulations that are in place or required to have a safe operation of people housing chickens in urban environments. And frankly, it hasn't changed my mind. I recognize that it's trendy, it's popular, baby chicks are cute, but I don't think urban environments are a good place for them.
Sorry, Bernie. I also want to jump in and mention too that sometimes, in particular in the beginning, the municipalities will place a maximum on the number of permits that are allowed per year. And so that's another consideration if we wanted to look at something like a pilot project, or even just kind of in general, to make sure that it's a manageable project to oversee.
I guess I wonder if the councillors in Summerside, when they say they're the ones giving out the permits, Are they reaching out to Humane Society, or like who's helping them make that decision? Like how are they making Joe, you can't, but Mary, you can? I wonder how that happens.
I'm very sure it happens at the staff level.
Okay.
Uh,
I think that's a great question, Bernie. I think that that's one of our next steps is to reach out to them and
Absolutely.
determine the guidelines that they follow and compare them to the best practices that we found in other municipalities. Because that seems pretty not super transparent
Yeah.
process.
yeah, but I oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I was thinking the exact same thing, and to build on that, some of your earlier points about connecting with the bylaw officers in other jurisdictions out of respect of the only one that we've got in our city, and you know what the demands are there, and if we have to rely on some of our other partners, whether that's you know the Humane Society or even you know at the provincial level, do you get into like conservation and Department of Ag? I don't know, but thinking about those kind of things too, and the capacity that we've got at our municipality level.
Yeah,
Yeah, Karen and I have also kind of compiled a bit of a list of potential stakeholders, and we haven't reached out to them yet. That's probably our next step is to kind of, so just briefly, it's any other animal rights groups, if anybody has any suggestions about that. Often in other municipalities, like sometimes some vegan vegetarian groups can get can be oppositional to this because they don't want anybody eating eggs or using livestock for human consumption. But Karen, I think we talked about it briefly, and we kind of said, well, you know, veg PEI is usually, I think it's mostly made up of vegetarians that do eat eggs, so like I don't think that would be an issue here. I emailed the Humane Society, but I can follow up them. Sally Bernard would definitely be the, you know, the kind of a core local business. There's also a Facebook group called PEI Chicken People that are obviously in favor of this. The PEI Food Exchange, we've heard a lot about them from their members about how they would like to see this happen. So I think they're a natural stakeholder. And then some people, as you say, from agricultural backgrounds, like the Federation of Agriculture, Chicken Farmers PEI, and PEI Department of Agriculture. So yeah, those people are on the list. Have we? Do you think that we've forgotten anybody?
Just because you did mention that animal to human transmission, I would hate to put more work on the environmental health office, but they may be an important group to connect with. It may just be like what Ontario has, some education, but I wouldn't go ahead without connecting with them.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know
I'll
that
let
then.
even honestly, even to have a heads up, I think from looking more into this, and I guess like kind of realizing that there's a bit more controversy than anyway, it's not surprising, I guess, but we could certainly kind of at least give people the heads up that we're looking into this, in particular before doing kind of like a public poll, as Katrina's mentioned before, just to kind of see. Although, like, I think the question is really, the question is just, in general, do you support the keeping of up to 5 chickens, no roosters, hens only, on a single family residential property in Charlottetown? So it's pretty, but then, you know, for people to kind of potentially kind of say like, whoa, the city's looking at this and I didn't know. So
Yeah, and I think you
why
frame
we
this.
want to chat to people.
Yeah, I think framed that way is really nice, Morgan. I just wrote in the chat box as you were talking about vegan veg groups, because I had those cross my mind too, just so that they even are in the know, but maybe they would be separate to the group that you listed. But I mentioned like consultation, but that's not really the right word here. I think how you framed it as like just as a heads up so that they are in the know. And then based on the poll results, then there may need we may need more, you know, deeper conversations or consultations and things like that before going ahead with the policies. But I think for now, just the heads up.
Totally. And I think too that I think it's a great first question for the poll, because like if we get a resounding no, then that's great. Then we know that it's
Yeah.
not an area for us to focus on, and kind of the public has spoken. So, yeah, we'll see.
So the next steps would be for us to do this polling? Or is that,
I think the next steps, Karen and I, are to do some more, like to reach out to kind of those stakeholders and potentially connect with some of these, the municipal kind of people that would actually be responsible for implementing a program. And then once we basically give people a heads up that we're looking into this, then I think, even if we don't necessarily get the chance to kind of meet and get their input, then going ahead with the polling. Does that sound okay to everybody, and Katrina?
because you might get pushback from all those stakeholders and then you'll know.
Yeah, maybe. I think that
Absolutely.
even if we did, then I think it's still valuable to poll the citizens. But it would, I think it's important to let them know that we're looking into it
Yeah,
before
that
doing any
makes
public
sense.
polling.
Yeah.
But I'm still gonna do the public polling.
I agree, and I think that's really smart. I think that that's definitely a natural next step of this. And something I would suggest, but you can, approach as you see fit, is maybe when you reach out to them, you're giving them a heads up, but maybe just also asking kind of for their gut reaction, like kind of like just sort of getting that sense, and then also asking if they want to be involved in the process of like the review kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it would be good to just sort of have that information, and then also just thinking like natural questions that come up often when we do, well, we haven't done anything like this before, but when we take things to committee, like those questions come up, have you talked to these people? Have you blah, blah, blah. So just like being able to list in a report, we consulted all these groups and, whatever, they were all in favor, or like these ones were and these ones weren't, or what have you. Yeah, it's really
Great.
smart.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
That's moving along at a good pace. Okay. Thank you for all that work. Thank you. Next one is, before we go to the next one, any other comments or is that a wrap for backyard? I've got a bunch of seedlings growing in my little sunroom that hopefully will be in my front yard and backyard. I've not built a greenhouse, and that's, I guess, a good segue to the next one, which is the greenhouse. One, because I haven't had time, and I wasn't sure how big I could make it. We need to have a permit from the city in order to build a greenhouse. If you're out in the country, not necessarily so. I reached out to the bylaw officer, the one person, Todd, and he hasn't replied to me. I keep looking out my window because I can see his house from here, and we always keep missing each other. So I haven't heard anything back in regards to, I think there was something, Morgan, you had mentioned about the Culinary Institute with something that you had to tear down. So that's what I texted him to see if he was involved in that, and what were the particulars with that, and why was it unsightly, and how would one manage that or navigate through a bylaw of saying, well, you can build a greenhouse, you need a permit. However, I think it's unsightly, you have to tear it down. I can't find anything that says specific in regards to the greenhouse. Phil?
No, I haven't been there over the past week. I was surprised that I was always under the impression that there was a specific bylaw on plastic structures, but it's not. It just falls under the auxiliary building bylaw. So distance from borders and anything you build in the city, you need a permit for.
Right.
Katrina, would it be, and Bernie, because It sounds like we have a couple of questions for this bylaw officer. Would it be helpful for us to compile something as a food council, as opposed to kind of individually reaching out to this person? Or could we leave that up to you maybe, since you're staff, and just to touch base with them, even as an initial kind of discussion,
Yeah, certainly.
just so that we can get things moving?
Yeah, I'm happy to help if you guys want to send me a list of questions, or if you guys want me to, like, I can certainly have like an initial conversation. I know he's very busy, so whether I'll have any extra luck just because I'm staff, I can't promise. But certainly if you want to send me questions, or if you want me to set up a meeting, I can try and do that too, where like a few people can attend with me. Whatever you guys want to do, just let me know.
He can't be too busy because he's about to start looking after urban chickens too.
So I guess just to your point, like around consultation or whatever, yeah, I think it's important to reach out to this person, to let them know that we are kind of looking at this. So what do you suggest, Katrina, would be, in particular, if like maybe if they're too busy to kind of meet with us, should we just start with kind of a heads up? Like, do they even know that we're looking at some bylaws?
No, like, I mean, yeah, no, he doesn't,
Okay.
as far as I know. I'm sure he'll sit down with us, and I'm sure I can get him on the phone. I do know he's really busy. So just let me know what you
Yeah.
want to do. If you want to give me a list of questions, I'll give him a phone call, and that's no problem. Or if we'd prefer to have like a sit down meeting, I can certainly try and arrange that. It might just take a little bit of time.
Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest. I feel like I want to respect staff people's time. But at the same time, like they would be interested in hearing that we're working on this,
Yeah.
because it'll impact their work.
Well, why don't I give him a phone call, and I can kind of just float the question around the greenhouses and let him know that we're working on this, and maybe just get him thinking about any concerns he'd have, like start letting that mull over in his brain, and just let him know that in the coming little while, we'll probably be looking to have a meeting once you guys sort of have some
Sure.
specifics, and that if he has immediate concerns, to let me know and I'll pass them along. And then maybe
That
we can
sounds
have
great.
more of a dedicated sit down once we have, whether it's a draft by like policy, whatever it may be that we want to talk to him about.
Yeah, I guess just like I think we've got kind of greenhouses, and then we've got chickens to talk about. So, do you think that we should send anything else before kind of doing the public polling, or checking in with other stakeholders, or?
Would we want to also talk to him about compost? Is that something that would be also?
I'm
more
not
concern?
maybe, I don't know. So he has, it's his job to enforce it. So I guess it's if you have enforcement questions, because if you're, to my knowledge, he doesn't necessarily have like a hand in the creation of the bylaws. He's more like, you have to enforce this. So if we're concerned about something around the compost that would be enforcement, certainly I can ask that question as well.
So who is primarily, like, so in other situations this person would not be engaged prior to changing bylaws?
I don't know the answer to that. I have a
I think it's
feeling
worth
that's
asking.
probably happened. I mean, fully he should be, right? Like we want to,
Yeah.
because we want to know any issues he sees. I don't honestly know if that's always happening. I also don't know fully like what all he is responsible for, if I'm being totally honest. So that's probably a good thing for me to talk to him about as well. Like I don't know, the zoning and development bylaws quite literally changing every council meeting for the most part. I don't know though if planning takes care of that, or if he takes care of that, or I honestly just don't know. So I can talk to him about that as well.
That would be great. I think that's important information for us to understand. And in particular, moving into kind of the next stage of all of this, around, like, to Brad's comment about, if we do identify changes that we would like to see, how do we go about, who do we even address those concerns to, like who's in charge of making these decisions, and what are the mechanisms that we use to make recommendations. I think it's really important to kind of solidify like a process for us as a council.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do know the process. Like I want to talk to Todd about how he'd like to be engaged within the process of kind of forming, how we get somewhere. But what I would say is, depending on what we're looking to do, the first step is, all the stakeholder consultations that you're talking about, and then forming an amendment to a bylaw, a new policy, whatever it is, whatever approach you decide to take, and then doing kind of further consultations on that draft, right, to whoever needs to be engaged. And then once you have the draft that you want to put forward, it would need to go to the Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee, because of the fact that the Food Council falls underneath them. So that means I would take it to them if, depending on the situation, we could have a Food Council rep there probably as well to present. So that would be first step. And then depending on the bylaw again, so I think my understanding is that the different bylaws and policies are all fall under a certain standing committee of council. So if it just fell under environment and sustainability and they were in favor, it would then get forwarded to city council, and it would have to go, if it was a bylaw, it would have to go through 2 readings. So they would read it once and then they would wait till the next meeting and read it again. Or a policy would just go once and they would get approved. If it lived, for example, under a different standing committee, so for example, planning and heritage, then our committee would forward it on to planning and heritage. If it also got their stamp of approval, it would then go up the chain to council at that point.
So I guess the other thing that's related to this is that I did a summary of best practices, but I didn't I'm assuming that's not like, I feel like that's kind of a recommendation as a volunteer that has a handful of hours every month to commit to it. That's kind of the extent of the work that I can put into that. But there's quite a few kind of adaptations that would be needed to make to adapt it to Charlottetown bylaws. Like there's a lot of specifics around zoning that I just don't have the expertise in. And honestly, I don't have time to sift through those types of documents as well. So where does that fall in the process? Like at what point are we just focusing more so on kind of more broader recommendations and identifying those kind of like really summary best practices that we kind of see, and then kind of passing it off to staff? Is that how you see this working?
I mean, you could do that, certainly. So what would probably happen in that case is you put together a little bit of a report on the best practices. You kind of make your case for why you think this is important, and you would be making the recommendation that the city looks at, amending this bylaw to incorporate it, or whatever the recommendation may be. And then the committee would forward on appropriately or what have you. I guess the complication that comes with that is, I guess it's probably less likely to get done, in all honesty, or it'll probably get done slowly. Like that's not going to be anything official, right? They will have then said, okay, yeah, great, we accept your recommendation and we want this committee to take a look at it. But then it's a matter of finding that staff time. And I totally respect what you're saying in terms of volunteer hours, but I mean, we're also like every single department is feeling pretty overextended right now. So it's out of our control, I guess, what happens to it at that point.
For sure. It's more of I guess a general question, because I think, like Brad was talking about how we kind of drafted, and it's just, I feel like I think that it's our role. I think we should clarify it's our role to kind of make some recommendations based on where we're coming from, but ultimately it's got to be adapted in a way that by the people that write this kind of stuff on a regular basis. Like, as I say, like, because something like a chicken bylaw, it covers so many different areas, and I think it's important for us as a food council to understand like at what point, or like you say, like what level of support we can kind of expect or ask from staff, I guess.
Yeah. Sorry, one second. Megan, do you have your hand up?
Yep, I just raised my hand. Yep, and I think I sort of agree with Morgan that I see where you're coming from. Absolutely, Katrina. I think not to put words in your mouth, Morgan, but kind of at what point do we as food council members like sort of pass the baton off to then for the implementation, I guess. And I'm just thinking about, right now, I I I know you've still got RACA, but I don't know how long you've got RACA and like how long, like when would the next batch of students that you get would be, what are the climate sense coordinators, like do they have additional, 5 hours a week or so based on their roles? Could we tap into some of those areas to not like stretch the staff, the city staffs then like yourself, recognizing though that, it's the 4-ish hours a month that we have to contribute. So sort of balancing all of those, or maybe we do try to really push to get a student in to do some of this work for our council for maybe there's some fall placements that folks look for hours for. But I do know what you're saying, Katrina. Like if we need to be accountable for it, and if we don't take it to a certain point, it just won't happen. But we aren't able to take it to like the finish line just because of like when I look at legal terms, I just like sort of shrivel away because I have no idea what they're actually saying. So I would be useless there. So it's
Yeah,
sort of
I have a
balancing
question.
those. Yeah.
Does staff write the bylaws?
Yeah, good question. So I'm actually working on one right now. So the answer is yes, but it does go for legal review. So
Okay.
and that I forgot to mention that step in what I was talking about before. So we would draft that kind of thing, and generally, like in the one that I'm working on right now, I did a big review of them and pulled a lot of my language from them, but it will go for legal review.
Well, that's helpful to know even still, like maybe we can still like whatever point we have it at then sort of we can work with you or whoever the, maybe the bylaw officer or other city staff to take it one step further, and then legal review can take it to the finish line really. Like that would be my biggest concern is like to Morgan's point, I don't have the time to go through each like 3.6a section and refine the wording. But yeah.
It's not, Megan, thanks for what I'm saying, but I'm also kind of saying like I also feel like it's our role, like our role is not just to do research, and so we only have so much time to commit to the research end. Like I think it's also really important that we engage with the community, and so kind of balancing like again that those tasks, I guess. And so if it sounds like as long as we do a bit of due diligence and do some high level research to kind of form a case, then that can be like a launching pad for more research to be done at this level. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think it's going to depend what department you end up falling under and whether it's endorsed by, like, it may be true. I mean, I haven't been through this process. I can have a chat with Ramona too, but I mean, it depends on a lot of different factors, I think. Your point, Megan, about maybe potentially some like support staff helping, I think is a good one. I don't want to volunteer, Risa, but it's certainly a conversation I can have with her. And we are lucky this year. Actually, we haven't hired them yet. We're in the hiring process right now, but we'll be like I'll have 2 summers. Race will be staying on through the summer, which we're very excited about, and we will be having an additional one as well. So normally we would only have one, and this year we'll have 2. So the new person coming on will be responsible for our cosmetic pesticide bylaw administration. But I supervised that student last year as well, and there's a lot of extra time in that person's schedule generally. So between Risa and whoever the new person is, there will definitely be some potential support there if that's of interest to them. Like I don't want to make sure that whoever's working on it is interested and feels as though it's sort of in their wheelhouse. So I don't want to like volunteer anybody on this one, but there is some potential support to be found there. But yeah, to your question, Morgan, let me talk to Ramona a little bit. It really depends, I think, on, you know, I think if that's if that's the course you choose to take, I think it's fair and I understand. But kind of as Megan said, like at that point, it's a little out of your hands, and I can't promise what will happen to it.
Yeah, that's
I don't
fair.
have the
Oh,
binder.
go ahead, Bernie.
Sorry, Martin. I forgot my binder at work, but it seems to me somewheres in the binder that what the council is doing is to provide information to departments and the city council itself. And so hopefully that end of the formula will work, where when we're giving them ideas on bylaw changes or policies, that someone will find the time to do that, because that's one of our, I think that's one of our goals or mission is to educate staff and council on all the things that we're talking about at present.
Yeah.
So hopefully that is there. I know everybody's busy and it may fall on someone's desk and it may take a little longer, but we're working towards the same goals. They may not move everything off to the side and say, oh, well, the food council gave me this and I have to work on this, but hopefully it's going to be on their calendar, and when they walk into their office that this file has to be worked on at some point. Because we, like Morgan says, we don't all have the expertise, and we can't spend hours upon hours writing subsections, 0.4s and 5s and all that stuff. That's why we have those legal teams to review those. Does anybody have the binder with them? I just don't have. I don't have my binder when it talks about the council's goals and I forget the title of it.
Do you mean like the mission and vision statements, Bernie, or?
Institution, yeah.
Or terms of reference?
I don't have it right in front of me, but I mean, something similar to what you're talking about, I just wrote in the chat there. It might be worthwhile. I know Katrina, you sort of walked through what a general flow of this process would be. It would probably be great to have that as an additional document in writing with our terms of reference, so that we can follow this, because, you know, these are only 4 or 5 areas. But thinking back to our strategic planning meeting, we talked about a lot of different ideas, and well, my hope would be that we could keep doing this for other areas as well. And that way we're balancing the city staff hours with the volunteer council member hours, but still following the same general process, making sure that, you know, XYZ processes for research and consultation are met. And then here's like a draft template. I know you sent out a draft template for sort of this process that we've been doing so far, but even for the writing and things, or like, oh, you need this meeting. And I know that things will look different for every topic and different department that we need to engage, but that way we can follow the same general process while still balancing those hours. And sorry, that was a bit of a tangent off of what you were talking about, but I think it's in the same breath of the terms of reference, Bernie.
Yeah, I completely agree, Megan. And that's kind of what I was looking for, is just like, what's like, let's establish a general process, acknowledging that, like, yeah, for sure, if we're making our policy going to take time, but I think it's equally our role to do the engagement piece, in addition to kind of some basic research. So I guess that's where I was coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can put together
and solidifying the process, because it's new to all of us. You know what I mean? So like just kind of solidifying a bit of an outline for future work, because I'm getting so excited about the work that's happening right now. I just feel like we have a momentum that we haven't had in a long time, and I feel like it's really important work. So I just want to make sure that the work that's happening now starts to be consistent, and you know, like there's a handful of us that are leaving that are really passionate about this kind of stuff. So just wanting to make sure that like we set a really good kind of outline in before we head out.
Yeah, Agreed, for sure. So I will put together a bit of a flow, like what you guys are talking about, and I can send it around so that you guys can all see. I mean, in disclosure, you're new to this, but so am I. Like, I've been doing a lot more of it recently, so I'm getting more acquainted with it, but it's newer to me as well. But I can certainly put that together, and I'll send it. I have a meeting with Ramona on Thursday, so I'm gonna just sort of have a chat with her as to like her standing, like her advisory board that she works with, and how she sort of, they're not quite taking the same approach as you guys, but how she sees it fitting in. So I guess because I think what you have maybe is two options. You can either, well, establish this flow, and you can sort of decide where along the chain you want to forward these things. So for example, if the idea is to put forward recommendations and you want to put it forward at like kind of an earlier process, a stage in the process, I would say, and like pass it to staff at that point, you're obviously going to get a lot more topics covered and have your voice heard on a lot more topics, which is great. Or you would be able to pick fewer and you would actually sort of take it to the end. Either way, they're probably going to take about the same amount of time, and similar amounts going to get accomplished. It's just, it's all going to take a long time, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's okay. And it's important, you are an advisory board, so it's important to have those voices heard, and in that way. And I do think, there will be some staff uptake, like on something like backyard chickens. I have a feeling that would fall on my desk and it would be of interest. But like the one that I'm working on right now is around sustainable procurement, and I'm super passionate about it, but it still doesn't mean it's happening quickly because, I've got 100 other things on my desk. So I will talk to Ramona, and we can kind of establish that point at which you guys feel comfortable being kind of your handoff point, or the format in which you're forwarding those recommendations.
Okay. For the sake of the minutes, I was, like Megan suggested, busily writing down the process steps and the options and whatnot. But I think if it's all right with everyone, I'm just going to have put a note there that it's a desire to have the process clearly outlined with options, and that Katrina will put together a process in consultation with Ramona, rather than try and capture all of the nuances of who falls where and where do we pop off the flow chart. So
no, sorry, Colleen, I only said that to not like discredit the fact that you were taking minutes. I didn't expect you to have captured that. I pretty much forgot it all already, so thanks.
Yeah, no, and I was, because that's what I do. I thought it's not a clear process right now. There's a few different entry points and exit points that I don't want to have it captured in the minutes as something that is, and maybe it's an agenda item for the next meeting, is to go through what some of the options are, what some of the jump off points, and what the like kind of star where the points are for us to be in, or something like that. So I'm going to erase all my notes, but that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you summarized it really well, Colleen.
Okay, thanks. Go mute again.
Okay, thanks, Katrina. Next, I guess you're up again. We're still with regards to the asset map update.
Yeah, so I think I had just put city updates. I have a couple different updates for you guys. So one's on the asset map, but very small. Just, we kind of did the, feedback thing. We didn't get a ton of feedback, but we got some, and we got some good feedback. So Race and I are working right now with IT, like our GIS technician, to get some of those updates made. So that's just kind of, where that's at. And then one piece of feedback we did receive was what we've talked about on numerous occasions around farms and how they're not included, those that are outside the city, but obviously the food's coming here, and it would be great to have that map be connecting people with a CSA that want to take part in, or what have you. So that's something hopefully we will be able to address over the summer. I think hopefully I think Grace and I have sort of talked about her maybe taking that piece on and doing a bit of research as to how we can incorporate that best. But for the most part, the asset map is functional and great, and it's just needing a few little tweaks. So that's that. And then I already talked to you guys about the Climate Challenge Fund application and the food waste project. I did just want to give you, though, some clarification around the budget for this year for you guys. So citywide, we did have budget cuts this year. So, we had to do a bit of fancy folk in terms of sort of trying to make our budget work. So normally you guys have had a $10,000 budget, and what this year what we decided to do was give us a $10,000 budget for food projects. So what will happen, and this is what happened. This is also partly to bring it back in line with what happens with the other advisory boards as well, because as we talked about before, because you guys were first, there's some discrepancies that were wanting to be rectified. So normally what would happen is that there would kind of just be like a budget within the department, and then you guys would come with your recommendations, and then it would be, as we've gone through council, but there's no like pot set aside. So anyway, there's $10,000 set aside for food projects for this year. It will work the same, but it's not necessarily reserved all for the food council. Like staff can kind of spend it as well, but that said, it's going to be me spending it. So things that I'm hoping to spend it on will come through for you. So for example, like the food mesh project. But yeah, that's how that will work this year, but there is definitely still money there to be spent.
Sorry, Katrina, so just to clarify, the 10,000 is still there, but it's like you're hoping instead of using it for other, sorry, I guess I'm not really understanding. You are able to use it to tap into that 10,000 for food related projects that we want to see happen with city staff support too, as opposed to just us doing the initiatives.
There's $10,000 there. You guys can put a request forward to use some of that $10,000, but staff would also be able to use it as well. So there's $10,000 total for food projects. So what I guess I'm saying is that, I mean, in theory, the way that we've set it up, I could just go use it without consultation. I won't do that.
Right.
And we'll talk about it. But I guess what I'm saying is that you'll have to put forward your request, and then we'll go from there. But that $10,000.
And we've always kind of done the request anyway. And I don't have any issues with you. I mean, you've been I just wrote in the chat box, you're a great support and asset to us. Would it be, I don't imagine, but other city staff, like, would then they think, oh, I want to do some random like healthy snack thing, I'm going to do a food initiative?
No. So it's still environment and sustainability money. So the only people
perfect
any access to that pot of money would be me and Ramona and Jessica Corkum-Gorel, who's our tree officer, but she wouldn't touch it either without talking to me. So
that's just one I wanted to clarify. That's great. Thanks.
Yeah. So potentially, oh, sorry. Okay. I'm not sure there, but
I think that was background noise.
Okay. Yeah, so potentially that said, there would be money coming out of that pot for the food mesh project. Still figuring out the logistics of that, but maximum it would be $5,000. And then that would leave $5,000 probably untouched for you guys. And then that said as well, though, that because of the sort of increased flexibility with the way that it's been set up, there would probably be room to pull. Like if it, it wouldn't be, it's not as rigid, I guess, as it once was. So if there's a project you really want to do and that pot's running out, there's probably room to borrow from elsewhere. So I guess it's a little bit more confusing than it's been in the past, but don't let it sort of like limit the things you bring forward, I guess is what I would say. Any other questions around that? Okay. And then the last thing, and I'll just sort of bring this up and you guys can reach out to me by email if you have anything you want to contribute. But one thing that has been requested of all city staff who are resources, like staff resources for an advisory board, is we have to put together a bit of a report on the effectiveness of our advisory board and the terms of reference and whether we think that there should be any changes to the terms of reference. So we did just go through an update to the terms of reference for this council not very long ago. So I will give it a review. You guys are welcome to as well. I don't know if I see the need for any huge updates. I think, Morgan, you highlighted a really good point in that this council is moving in a great direction and has also accomplished a lot. I know there's been struggles in the past, but has also accomplished a lot in the past. So I think there's a lot of good things to highlight. But that said, you know, there may be, you know, challenges to highlight as well, and that's okay. I just wanted to sort of be upfront with that with you and open it up to anybody who might want to contribute any comments on that that you'd like me to include in the report. Yeah. So that has, but although that said, I did just see an email from Ramona come through. I think I may have to put that. I was supposed to have another week to put it together, but it sounds like I might have to do it tomorrow. But anyway, if you have any immediate thoughts, please send them. I have a lot of great things to say. So, you know, I'm certainly not like making a recommendation to disband the Food Council or anything like that, but just wanted to open it up to you guys.
Can we just send that to you via email or what?
Yeah, that's great. And then if you can do that by like no later than that, let me just quickly read this email. I think I might need it by kind of end of day tomorrow.
The joy of deadlines when you're not expecting them to be that.
Yes, both of us, and I shouldn't throw Ramona under the bus here, but we both just sort of forgot that although the deadline officially is next week, there's something we have to do in advance of the deadline. Yeah, it looks like I have to get it submitted. So if anybody has immediate thoughts and you want to get them to me.
Honestly, I'll say I won't bother emailing you. I don't want to take time, but my biggest comments would be, I feel like that any of the challenges we had pre-reviewing terms of reference, pre-strategic planning, I feel like, as Morgan said, we're in the right direction and those issues have sort of resolved themselves. I think the number of people at the table and all of those things are lending themselves and to be, you know, we're an effective group, I will say, it seems. But yeah.
I echo what you just said and add, obviously, Katrina, you're a big help to this council. It's a new council, it's growing, we're learning, but to have a staff that's always available and that they're ready is tremendous help. So there should be maybe a little note there that staff is invaluable to this committee.
Yeah, I completely agree. And making sure that it doesn't, you know, if you want us to write a section or like a blurb about that for you, like I'm happy to, because I'm sure that there are other staff that support other advisory boards that don't give the level of support or information or follow-up that you do. So that's been a huge help to us and support, and it's why we've gotten things done. And I wouldn't want that to go unnoticed for you. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And certainly if you would like it included, I would appreciate it if you guys wrote it, because I'm okay if it doesn't go in there, but I don't really feel comfortable writing it myself. But
I did put it in the minutes.
thanks, Colleen.
I just said thoughts were shared, including that Katrina is very supportive to the council and is highly valued.
I'll certainly sit down this evening or tomorrow morning and write something and send it off to you. And every other counselor, if you feel the same way, if you have something to share, send it off.
I completely agree, Bernie. I think maybe you could just like sign all our names on that, because it's other I feel like just kind of like, what are we even doing, honestly? Like, if we're not connected in a formal way to the city, and you do that in a really great way. So yeah, I completely agree. Thanks, Bernie, for drafting that. It's awesome.
Appreciate it, everyone.
Agree.
Okay.
Any other updates, Katrina?
No, that's all of my updates. So yeah, thank you all for all the work you're doing. I'm really excited about the direction that the council's headed in. I think you guys are all doing some great work.
Thanks, everyone.
We have there was a new business, and I failed to ask the committee, the council, before we started, when we asked if we wanted to add something. They were saying, "Oh, Bernie, go." This is really quick. It'll be really quick. We had a presentation last council meeting. Aaron Bateman and I forget the other lady's name, about sharing knowledge with gardening. People who wanted to grow food in someone else's. Aaron reached out and asked if council would write a letter of support like we did to Sandra. She is, I think she's applying for a micro grant. So I told her, I said, I can't recall, and I can't see it in the minutes that we would write a letter, so I'll bring it to council this evening and ask if it's okay if we, then I'll write something similar to what Morgan did, and I'll write, sign off for the council and send it off to her if we're okay with that. Yeah. Okay. So just.
Yeah, that's
That's
Bernie.
great.
Do you need me to make a motion?
Probably.
I can make a motion that we write a letter to support. And yeah, like you say, just use the one that I wrote and just.
And I'll second it, Colleen, for the minute.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ron. I hope everybody's doing well with COVID. I know we're entering in another 4 weeks of close down, and there's stress. And so
Can you say that again, Phil? You're just the mic.
Maybe type in the chat. I'm not hearing you. I
It's
don't know
just
why.
muffly. I don't know if maybe try speaking from that distance, Phil.
Vicky was asking about the community refrigerators.
Oh,
Status on that project.
so that was the Sandra's community refrigerators. I spoke to her at the market about a month ago, and they had submitted letters for funding, and they were looking to purchase a fridge, and they were hoping to go ahead with the project. I can't recall where the location was, but I think she had found a location, but I can't recall where it was.
And I did put her in touch with oh, cool. I did put her in touch with the Colonel Gray shop teacher carpenter for shelters, and they actually he said he doesn't advertise it well, but they do that kind of stuff all the time. He was quite funny about it. So I hope and I think that they connected after I followed up. And I see that Phil said he has one to donate, so that's awesome.
a fridge.
Yeah, do you have her contact information, Phil? Or if you want to send me details on the fridge and everything like that, I could forward it along with your contact information to Sandra if you want to do that. Send me an email.
Okay. With that, I guess we're any business. I'd have a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn. Oh,
Morgan had her hand up.
I can second.
Phil too. Yeah.
Seconders. Thank you so much for taking the time this evening. Great work. It's a great council. It's energizing to finish a meeting like this with folks who we're actually getting work done. Moving on to the next month. Stay in touch if there's anything that we can do to help other committees. Don't hesitate to send an email to everybody. I'm volunteering, everyone. Sorry. And you can say no, I'm not. I'm busy, but you can call Phil. That kind of thing. So thanks again. Enjoy your evening and take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you.